Where do we start with this episode, Javier? I reported on the Wade Keller hotline for VIP members earlier this afternoon that we should not expect a tame Raw after Mania. I was given indications that there was a lot that was going to be coming out of this WrestleMania and a lot coming up on the Raw after Mania. I wasn't necessarily prepared for this much. A 3-hour show with a lot to cover. Our post shows can go long. I've been working hard to keep them under 2 hours. A streak of post shows under 2 hours. We're going to aim for that again here and try to get through a lot more stuff. All the stuff on tonight's Raw. A little briefer at least, so we cover everything. And then we've got all week on our podcast, tomorrow's flagship episode of the Wade Keller Pro Wrestling Podcast. That's a podcast audio only show. Will give us more time to get into this, more Wade Keller hotlines, everything with Rich and Wade, the Fix with Todd Martin, and all of our other shows, including Javier, yours, your Acknowledging WWE episode. This gave us a lot to talk about. Okay, so enough generalities. First of all, for those watching on YouTube, Javier did warn his camera's a little in and out today. That has it was giving a warning sign, so he might be in and out. But good to see you, Javier. Let's start with and I talked about this on the. You're missing a lot if you're not a VIP member, by the way. I talked about this on the VIP roundtable last night with Todd Martin and Rich Fan. That this probably wouldn't just be. I suggested it might not be just Paul Heyman and Seth. I was getting a sense of maybe a new dangerous alliance of sorts, and we kind of ran through some possible fun names for that. As the show progressed with the Becky Lynch heel turn, with the return of Rusev, I was starting to manufacture in my head some cool possible dangerous alliance stablemates, so to speak, with Seth and Heyman. But in the end, the most obvious person joined, Bronn Breaker. Somebody who Paul Heyman behind the scenes has been working with, is very, very high on, and rightfully so. Paul picks him out. You know, he aligns himself with big names like Ronda Rousey and Brock Lesnar. Big turns for established stars like Roman Reigns, for instance, of course, CM Punk. But now, not only is he reinvigorating Seth, we'll debate whether he should be coming out to the same music and the same gaudy clothes if he wants to be refreshed. But now we have Bronn Breaker in the group. I wouldn't rule out a newly turned Becky joining the group, maybe Rusev as an enforcer of sorts. I think there's still some room for expansion here. Javier, what's your take on the Paul Heyman, Seth, Bronn Breaker situation with Punk and Reigns taking a beating from Seth and Breaker tonight?
Yeah, it makes sense. I am intrigued at a powerful, top of the card faction because Rollins being one of the top guys and Breaker being pulled up there. Made sense how he lost the title in a multi-man match. I was expecting him to move up the card and tippy top. I mean, that's going to be they immediately put him up against Reigns and Punk. So it's I'm looking forward to what they're going to do with Breaker because he's got a something factor to him that he's definitely going to be someone that's going to be likely carrying the company in the future.
Bronn Breaker is phenomenal. I mean, he really is. I mean, and he's like one of those guys where you kind of, it's funny. We're doing we put up on the Wade Keller Pro Wrestling Podcast feed our 15 years ago shows, and we're talking about like Jack Swagger, and talking about his future. And Swagger's one of those people who, he looked the part. He looked like, he's got maybe some Brock Lesnar-like pedigree, great size, a good look. But you started hearing behind the scenes, he wasn't a serious student of the game. He wasn't a serious professional. There's a report of him falling asleep at a production booking meeting once. And, management soured on him, and that happens. With Bronn Breaker, there's been no signs of that. Every indication from everybody is this guy wants to be a big, successful star, and that he is bringing every level of professionalism to this. He's asking all the, a lot of the times it's do you engage with veteran wrestlers and voices in the back? Do you show respect for them? Do you ask the right questions? Do you show humility, but also determination? He's checked all those boxes. It's not a surprise to me that Heyman would want to associate with him. And I think one of the keys with what we saw last night, where Heyman, everyone was going, oh, will Heyman be with Punk or Roman? The whole thing was set up to choose between the two of them. And all along, and I talked about this, and I didn't know what was going to happen, but I talked all along that I think, this isn't like, amazing, who could have thunk this insight, but I talked about how this match wasn't put together because the match on paper seemed like this is going to be a great WrestleMania main event. It's going to solve all kinds of things. This match was put together, and I said this multiple times in recent weeks, by working backwards from what they wanted to do angle-wise in that match. And the prevailing thought was either Heyman aligns with Reigns, Heyman aligns with Punk, maybe Punk turns heel. There had been some talk in the final days leading up to it. Maybe there would be a Seth heel turn. But I think most of that was framed as it'd be Heyman with Punk against Seth, or Heyman with Reigns against Seth. But no, we got Heyman with Seth. Heyman and Seth on its own feels, Seth's been around forever. Seth can talk. Is Seth worthy of being Heyman's next guy? And that's when the faction, comes into play, that there'd be this, essentially a new dangerous alliance. You can Google that and look at the history of that and in WCW back in the day. I'm a fan of that if this grows even more than this, but I really like the idea of Breaker and Seth together for a while. Javier, back to you for some thoughts on that.
Yeah, those were my thoughts, that either this match was in order to propel CM Punk to winning a title, or because I thought that Reigns had no chance. I didn't think Reigns was going to win this. He didn't need to. And the other one was Seth Rollins. Although I was thinking more along the lines with The Rock, because I still need some sort of closure for that. My soul can't heal without it. So I thought it might have been some sort of thing where, it would have been Cena and Rollins under a de facto thing, but so it was different from what I thought. And the whole Dangerous Alliance thing makes sense. Rusev coming back kind of makes you think that maybe him, because, have just someone who could basically take losses for the faction, your Tama Tonga or Tongaloa. I'm really excited to see where things are going to go with this storyline going forward.
Yeah, my inclination is to think, and I wouldn't rule it out, but that we're not going to see Jacob Fatu in this. I think this new faction is going to seem as different as possible from what Heyman had been doing with the Bloodline, and not just have it feel like a sequel or a derivative. That said, I talked about, watching this show with the idea in mind. Like, for instance, when Rusev made his return, Michael Cole said Raw has just become more dangerous. And I thought, okay, they're playing on, it's just a little subtle, Easter egg that's he's going to be in a new dangerous alliance. And I could even see them calling it that. They assume they own the rights to it. It would be a callback. So I thought, okay, that's a little clue. Rusev would be kind of the enforcer with his arms crossed in the back, protecting Heyman. But the other name that I haven't brought up that I'm intrigued with, besides Becky Lynch, is Sami Zayn. Jey Uso is world champion, celebrating a lot of tension. I want to get into that segment. I thought the body language, facial expressions, the body positioning, everything. It brought me back to the Bloodline days in their behind the scenes skits where you just want to rewatch it, even though there was only two people for most of it. The body language of Jey and Sami was just brought me back to those backstage segments with the Bloodline. Where, Jay's not happy with Sami being out there, but maybe warming to it, but still a little leery. And then when they stand on the second rope, Jay's keeping an eye on Sami the whole time in a way that you would expect somebody to, who has a mixed background with Sami in terms of trust and not trust. And so the whole thing, there was tension throughout that. And I'm like, okay, I could see Sami possibly being part of this too. So I mean, they weren't playing into that on TV. I don't know if the average viewer was wondering who's going to join this group, but it wouldn't shock me if now people start wondering, is there going to be a third or fourth person? Becky, Sami, Rusev, Jacob Fatu, like has been suggested. So I'm all for 4 or 5 people, including a woman being in the faction. What do you think of the Sami option, Javier?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing is that they've done such a good job in having him be a babyface that I think him being the first hurdle that gets, well, I mean, they kind of did that with Kevin Owens, but with the injury, things went awry. I could see him be like the guy who gets destroyed, before the real hero shows up to dismantle the faction. Yeah.
Comment from Derek Mitchell. Seth Rollins said he'll be guiding the future of wrestling, and Bronn Breaker checks those boxes. I don't think Rusev would join Seth and Heyman because you don't need him if you have Braun. I mean, I think you can make it work, but maybe there is more room for Rusev to reach his potential, not being clearly the third guy behind Seth and Bronn at that point. Rusev is not a future star, though. He is a current star. He's a returning star, but he doesn't have like this untapped, bright future. He is just who he's going to be, and obviously people are excited to see him back. But I could still see Rusev just standing there with his arms crossed going, you got to go through me to touch Heyman, while Bronn is wreaking havoc and Seth is being the active leader. So anyway, and actually Goodfella 1422 in the chat says, would they pull a younger guy they believe in, like Trick Williams or Obafemi, and try to elevate a younger guy for the main roster audience? I assume that's in the context of Heyman. I don't think they're going to add anyone besides Bronn Breaker, who's a young up-and-comer. Maybe at a later date, but I think, everyone's going to have a very distinct role. Seth's the veteran leader, and Rusev would be the enforcer, and Bronn would be the up-and-comer. And we can draw analogies to the Horsemen of the Dangerous Alliance over the years and other factions, heck, Legacy, and see, yep, the dynamic in that way. So that's interesting. Danny Tuchito says, subtle thing. Sammy stepped in front of Jimmy to follow directly behind Jey when they walked up the ramp. Also, Sammy ran off to the side and celebrated by himself when they reached the stage. Yeah, I don't think there's anything accidental there, Javier. You and I really admired the Bloodline segments and all the nuances and the need to just go back and rewatch segments 5 times if 5 people were on screen and appreciate each of them. I'm excited by this. I think this is a really, broadly speaking, this was a big reset for Raw. I thought the booking dragged a bit in the last couple weeks before Mania. I mean, I think they paced themselves deliberately in the sense that there was the 3-week span that's all about Cody and Cena. Before that, it was about Jey celebrating his title win. Then we kind of got into the last couple of weeks heavily into the night 1 main event with Heyman and the triple threat. And then the women kind of each took their turns too. And I understand the strategy of that. You don't want to overwhelm people. This show was a way to say, it's not WrestleMania season anymore. It's post-WrestleMania season. As Standard Deviation said, this feels like a new chapter. A lot to get into. Javier, anything you want to say about, broadly speaking?
No, I mean, I think we get into the weeds.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah.
Yep. So let's pause and introduce the show, and then we'll get to more chat comments and delve into much more from a newsworthy show. I mean, I'm sitting here in my head thinking about all the things. When you say, well, let's get into the weeds and talk about this, so much happened, and I feel like there's going to be things we barely get to that could deserve an hour of analysis. This is the Wade Keller Pro Wrestling Post Show for Monday, April 21st, 2025, and I'm Wade Keller, host of the show, the editor, publisher, and founder of the long-running Pro Wrestling Torch weekly newsletter and the website, PWTorch.com. We have a review, by the way, of a Fozzy concert up on the site. Chris Griffin attended Fozzy concert, new Torch contributor, and he relayed what that was like on WrestleMania weekend. He said when he bought tickets, he did not know that it didn't jump out to him that it was going to be WrestleMania weekend. So, but nevertheless, that's kind of fun up there. A lot of cool stuff on our website. Hope you're checking it out regularly. Javier Machado is my co-host on tonight's post show. He writes PLE previews for WWE PLEs. He called the Dominik, or at least said it would be a cool idea, Dominik winning the Intercontinental title. Todd Martin pointing out that he said on the Fix the day before that Dominik would win. Wanted to make sure that he
I have sadly not heard the Fix in a couple weeks. So. Yeah. So I've been kind of like not plugged in too much. So.
Yeah. That happens. It's not like the Fix is a 10-minute listen. You gotta. I know you got a lot going on. I wasn't accusing you of copying it by any means, because obviously the way you wrote it was your idea.
But I know Todd Nothing might just take a shot here and there.
Yes. So we're here to talk Raw. We are here every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. I am in the after Raw, Dynamite, and SmackDown. We have live chat interaction. We invite live callers. And then we also take emails. If you'd like to be part of the show live, you want to find the link to the show in my TV reports covering Raw, Dynamite, and SmackDown at PWTorch.com. If you're a VIP member, of course, at PWTorchVIP.com, you get, as a VIP member, access to our uncluttered, ad-free website with exclusive content and rabbit holes everywhere to take you back to the late 1980s and beyond for all of our hundreds of retro radio shows from the 90s that are fascinating, and 2 decades plus of podcasts on demand, nearly 2,000 back issues of the Pro Wrestling Torch newsletter, and exclusive columns and features every week. So go VIP, pwtorch.com/go VIP. This is a great time to go VIP. As I said, you're missing out on a lot this weekend after Saturday night and Sunday night's WrestleManias. Todd Martin and Rich Fan joined me for an hour-plus reviews of each of those nights. We also had an NXT Stand and Deliver post-show. And then on this afternoon, as I mentioned, I did a Wade Keller news update, kind of digesting a lot of things and providing some insights into what's going on with The Rock and Cody and what to prepare for, somewhat without spoilers, that tonight was going to be a huge event. One thing we do promise, and I steer clear, even when it's out there in social media everywhere, I really try to steer clear of just treating spoilers as common knowledge. If that's valuable to you, you've picked a good brand to have your wrestling analysis and news delivery, because we really do try to stay out of that. So anyway, encourage you to go VIP. pwtorch.com/go VIP is the way to get all the information. You can sign up through Spotify and Patreon and get a 7-day free trial. Just search PWTorch VIP, or you can sign up with credit card, debit card, and PayPal. Get a full VIP membership compatible with Apple Podcasts, Apple CarPlay. It's very slick. You get an email when you sign up, and there's a link. You click it, and you're in. There's no advanced settings. There's no passwords. It is compatible with Apple Podcasts. We really customized a system that's really friction-free. And we also run 18 years ago podcasts throughout the week, so you can kind of relive our coverage in podcast format from 18 years ago. So if you have taken a break from us for any reason, life gets busy, budgets get tight, but you're excited about what you're seeing now, we're excited to cover it. We'd love to have you on board. So check that out. My co-host today is Javier Machado. We already talked to them, obviously, in the opening A block, and talked about what he contributes to PWTorch. Javier, you have a big podcast coming up on the PWTorch Dailycast this week. Who's in rotation for co-host this week?
It should be Kevin, but he,
Fair enough. So we'll figure it out.
Life happens, because he travels a lot. So
Yep.
So I still have to invite him to record tomorrow or Wednesday. So.
Yeah, well, check in with me if you're short, because I know there's people who'd be eager to talk with you about everything going on coming out of WrestleMania weekend from the team also. So if you're not going to be a VIP member, all the free podcasts are on our VIP podcast feed. And if you get a full VIP membership, you can customize your podcast feed on your phone app. So you can have a dozen. I have like 20 different feeds for VIP shows. Each show has a separate individual feed. I group them by retro and nostalgia flashback shows and current events. So whatever I have time for, and I can catch up easily and get right to the show that I want. Even though we publish so many podcasts, they can run off the main listing pretty quickly. So that's another perk of full VIP membership. But if you're not VIP, you want to take advantage of our free shows, search Wade Keller in your podcast app, subscribe to the Red and Blue Logo Show. Tomorrow's Blue Logo Show, the regular podcast, will feature the flagship that I'll host, and we'll be going in depth on tons of stuff from a very busy weekend, and give AEW their due too, because they had a really good Dynamite last Wednesday, and we'll be back on the radar starting tomorrow. But while you're at it, search PWTorch to subscribe to the PWTorch Dailycast. That includes a different show each day of the week, including PWT Talks NXT, the big show wrapping up the Las Vegas weekend tomorrow, and also includes the post pay-per-view and PLE show, Wrestling Night in America, with Brandon LeClaire and Greg Parks. Chris Adams made his debut last night. There are 2 very long, especially last night, WrestleMania post shows for free. Brandon LeClaire just does a great job with those shows. Greg always brings it. And Chris Adams is one of the newer contributors who's really shined on audio. And so there's a lot of really good discussion and analysis. I'm listening today to the show, and I'm like, I didn't even catch that. They make me want to go back and rewatch WrestleMania and pick up on some of the things that they picked up on and discussed. So check that out. Search PWTorch in your podcast app. Subscribe to the Dailycast. Okay, so if you want to participate, join in the chat. Email the show, wadekellerpodcast@gmail.com. Or if you're a VIP member or Patreon supporter, click on the link in my TV report or on our Patreon page, and you can be a video caller. Speaking of which, let's pivot now, Javier, and start with callers. I mean, there's so much to cover. I feel like if we bring up a second topic, callers will be on hold and 40 minutes will go by and they'll be tired. So let's go first to Ben Baker joining us. Ben, welcome to the show. You're the first caller here on the post show for the Raw after Mania. What's on your mind about Raw tonight?
Yeah, it's funny. I didn't even realize that I was queued up to talk right now, but I'm prepared to say something.
Oh, cool. Okay.
So, no,
you
it's
can
all
click the
good.
link. I should say, on our page, we have a link to be a caller and then a link to stream the show. And it has happened before. Someone clicks the link to be a caller, and they just actually mean to stream it. But anyway,
really funny.
welcome.
Well, first, a long-time listener, first-time caller here. Actually, I've been a post-event reporter for you a couple of times when I used to live in Austin. But
oh, sweet.
yeah, I thought it was a really strong show. I'm really digging the faction with Heyman. I will say this: I think Seth needs some new music if he's trying to get over as a heel.
Yep.
I don't think that's going to happen with the crowd chanting. But there have been some confusing crowd interactions here over the past, I would say, 48, 72 hours.
Yes.
So I think they need to sort through some of that stuff. But I don't know. Maybe it's because it was the last segment. But that's kind of where my head is with the with Seth's music. Maybe that's a good place for them to try to start ironing out some of the crowd reactions to get what they're wanting with this.
Let's talk about that, Javier. What do you think about Seth's presentation tonight? I mentioned in my TV report at PWTorch.com, where every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, I've got a written report on Raw, Dynamite, and SmackDown. So I encourage everyone to take a break from social media and see what I'm saying about the shows. And also, if you can't see the shows, it's a good way to catch up. And in my report, I said, for those who are hoping Seth to drop the music and drop the gaudy, bright outfits and change his demeanor, so far that's not the case. Now, doesn't mean he can't. Javier, should he? Or is it okay for fans to sing a song for 2 minutes and then boo him afterwards? Is it okay to have him not dramatically change his demeanor if he wants people to look at him through a fresh set of eyes, through a fresh lens?
I mean, if I'm assuming they're not going to, the way that they've been presenting Heyman on commentary, I felt they were a little bit heavy-handed in the way that they were treating Heyman during the main event on Saturday, where it's like, man, they're really pushing Heyman as being like a prick over the stuff going on. And so it seems like they're planning on this being a full-bore heel faction. Seth Rollins till now has kind of been playing the sort of in-betweener, so he's facing CM Punk, and some people are not going to like CM Punk and are going to be cheering on Seth Rollins. So he's kind of, it works, for what he was doing. But if he's going to go full-blown heel, he's got to do what they did with Shinsuke, with Shinsuke's most recent song has motifs of the original one, but in no way that you can actually, sing along. Finn Balor's another one that has, motifs and things that make you recall the original song, but you don't really, get it. They need to do something with that for sure, because the whole sing along, you're just playing along. And I think a lot of the stuff that they've been doing with that is part of the reason why you're getting these schizophrenic crowds that are like going back and forth. And I mean, I think that for me, the crowds detracted over the weekend a lot, particularly with the, when Cody was like getting booed out of the stadium and cut a great promo, and then like everyone's cheering and then everyone's booing, and it's just so disjointed. Yep. And the crowd's an important part of that. So, and the crowd going into business for themselves. I mentioned on my podcast where I hate them doing they're copying the European chants and stuff like that. Like, you just want to be part of the show. It's been really annoying in the last couple of weeks.
I think it's a problem. I don't know that WWE thinks it's a problem, but I think it's a problem. I mean, I think that we want there to be some semblance of logic to how crowds respond. And I don't know what to do about it to fix it instantly, but I know what to stop doing to encourage it to continue. But I don't know. I mean, I don't know if you can. It's like the what chant. I mean, you can go, oh, I wish we never did that. But I don't know if what the solution is to stop it. But fans chanting one more time. I mean, when there's a heel turn, it's like the crowd's just like, hey, this is the thing we do. And it's really fun. I mean, they're charging big money for WWE events to be there in person, and people want to be part of these chants that they've been watching on television, and the whole communal experience is part of the attraction of being there. It's Rocky Horror Picture Show on steroids, in a way, under bright lights and in a modern setting and a much bigger stage. But I'd like to see WWE like try to steer people away from that, because it does undercut when they try to do a serious angle like Gunther beating up Pat McAfee tonight. They sort of want it both ways. They want you to really react a certain way some of the time when there's a villain and a protagonist who's being unfairly undercut by that villain or betrayed. But then they also just want you to have fun, and they're like, any reaction is a good reaction. The whole Cena thing, as long as he's getting a reaction, which is always a cop-out answer. So I don't know. But part of it would be, as Ben brings up, like starting to cut back on the things that fans enjoy about heel presentations. Javier, anything you want to add to that before I throw back to Ben?
Yeah, I mean, it's because the one more time with the Becky thing, we'll get to that in a minute. I think that's more along the lines that no one really cares for Lyra Valkyria. Sorry, Lyra, but in particular over Becky. So they want to just see Becky do cool stuff. It's part of having, not having the baby faces and heels correctly aligned as part of it, along with, I mean, if my recommendation for WWE is study really hard whatever the hell you're doing with Gunther, because Gunther's a badass. I love Gunther, but they're chanting, F you, Gunther, and when he's choking out McAfee and doing despicable things, he's hated. Figure out what worked with that. Figure out what happened, what worked with early MJF, and try to bottle that. And I think that's because you're right. It gets. There's no reason why everybody's. I think they were chanting "Thank you, Rollins" after his music stopped. They started chanting "Thank you, Rollins," and then went to a CM Punk chant.
I know. And I mean, to me, the epitome is "Let's go Cena, Cena sucks." That's not a dueling chant between two factions of fans. It's the same fans chanting both. They just want to participate in an iconic chant, and they're doing both of them. Same thing now as you bring up with Seth. Thank you, Seth. But then they chant for CM Punk and OTC. It's not ideal. I mean, it's not ideal. And I think that for the peak experience for pro wrestling is when you get fully into rooting. I mean, the NHL playoffs are upon us. The NBA playoffs are upon us. It's the Knicks cheering on their Knicks having a 22-0 run or whatever it was against Detroit over the weekend. You want to have that. I mean, that's ideal. And I don't know why WWE does anything to conflict with that. And we had a lot of that going into this week. Even now, Rhea Ripley, coming up to Io Sky. Io Sky is universally loved. There's this talk, fans won't like a pure, a pure snow baby face, freshly fallen snow baby face. People love Io Sky because Rhea and Bianca were jerks to her. They were treating her as a subhuman, and she's sweet and kind and super talented and standing up for herself. Wrestling fans are willing to embrace that character. There was different eras where they wouldn't have. And I think it still is undercutting Rhea. Rhea coming out after WrestleMania, fans should be going bonkers for her and cheering her against somebody. Instead, they have mixed feelings. I'm not a fan of mixed feelings and trying to shake things up from, the staid, traditional, old school approach to baby faces and heels. Don't try to reinvent that. Things are working. Things have been working well without that. And, even though, like you said, Gunther is a really effective heel. Some people are joking he turned babyface by attacking McAfee and Cole, and I get that. But the crowd is anti-Gunther, and he knows how to play a heel effectively.
Note the crowd's reaction when McAfee went to save Cole. That was a friend saving a friend, and the crowd was into that moment. That I think went a long way for them going after that. So that kind of storyline, one of the things I would recommend, if you don't have anybody on staff that's your writer and it's not like reading manga, watching anime, which is like where a lot of the current fandoms have moved to. Nobody reads comic books now; they read manga. Mm-hmm. Just go to your local bookstore and see the massive area that they have on that, and the type of characters that are popular in that. The VTubers, I just learned last week about Gura, a shark VTuber character who retired last week. I fell into a rabbit hole with that. But the thing is, I'm mid-40s, so like those are not, particularly VTubers are not, is something that's outside of my realm of experience. But that's where the audience is that you want to capture. So learn. What is it about these characters and these people that actually are, people are attracted to, and try to like somehow merge that in the types of stories that you tell.
Ben, back to you.
Yeah, that's a great discussion. I mean, if it was me and I was trying to curb audience attitude towards one of my talents, I think it would be sort of a crawl, walk, run. You know, there's some things that just
Yeah.
aren't within your realm of control. But I'll tell you this, I mean, the music is, you know, and so there's a part of me, you know, you're just not setting a solid foundation whenever you have a song for a heel that has a chant built into it that everybody loves. Part of me just wants to hear his Architect theme again, you know, and hear him come out to that his older song, you know, that he used to come out to. But even that, you know, people may be drawn to that. One other thing, and then I'm gonna hop off again. Surprise run in here. I appreciate you guys entertaining my call. Curious to hear your thoughts on Rusev's presentation and where they go there. I think. I loved, you know, some of his work that he did in AEW, and I think coming out of WWE during his, you know, prior run, I think he was more of a comedy figure, and it seemed like the crowd was ready to cheer him on as a comedy figure. Yet, you know, with the trunk color change and his sort of intimidating entrance with the art and the music and such, it sounds like they're trying to present him as more of a, you know, sort of a badass, if you will, and so. Curious to hear your thoughts on if there's any concern that he will fall back into, you know, sort of the conception of his character as it was before he left for AEW.
I don't know what to make. Ben, thank you for the call, by the way. Good topics. I don't know what to make of the fact that Rusev's return was, you know, beating up Otis. Like, is that to set up a feud and it establishes Rusev, at least for now, is going to be kind of mid-card? Or does it establish Rusev as a bully, and they know people love Otis and Tozawa and Maxine, and so it was just a way to really firmly establish this isn't Rusev Day. Ironic cheer him, babyface, video game player, tongue in cheek. Like, he's beaten up people who you like. So what's first of all, briefly, what's your take on Rusev in general, as the journey he's been on, the star that he could be, and then what do you make of tonight?
I would. One of like my gut reactions, I don't know if I would have him come back as Rusev, because that they went heavy into comedy with him with the real Rusev Day stuff. And if you're not going to do that and you're going to present it differently, I think I would have preferred if you just kept the Miro name. But that you know, that's up for, you know, we could dive or let in that. Yeah. But, you know, because it's just when I heard the people chanting Rusev and they called him Rusev, that my mind was already there. I think the whole thing is, you know, just take out Tozawa and probably lead to a one-on-one match with Otis, just to so that Rusev could throw him around and squash him, and to try to make him seem, you know, divorce him as much as possible from that, from his previous run. You know, the thing about Rusev is, like, I don't know what went on with AEW. I don't know the behind the scenes reasons, what soured, whether that was all on Tony Khan's or there was, you know, also on Miro or Rusev, you know, that, you know, and what was going on behind the scenes. Like, you know, does he él tiene la gana, you know, does, you know, to be the top guy, or is he just, you know, collecting a paycheck, that kind of thing, and see how if he fits into anything bigger. You know, I think right now it's like we're just going through a reintroduction phase with him. So,
yeah, yeah. The idea of having him come back under a different name, it could be a challenge because he was so well established in WWE as Rusev, and I think, you know, Malachi Black, Aleister Black, they're going to stick with their original names. But I get what you're saying. I mean, I'm not like, I don't want to advocate or root for Rusev being in the Dangerous Alliance, but I think that would be the way to frame him as a top guy, and not really like Jake Hager and Jericho's group in AEW, kind of along those lines, but with more more of an edge, more danger to him, a more serious approach. But I like the idea of like an enforcer being there. Not that Bronn Breaker needs it, but Breaker's going to be hard to corral. He's just going to be doing his thing. You need someone to just stand next to Heyman and protect him as Seth is antagonizing people and Bronn is plowing through people. So I guess I'm advocating for it. Yeah.
Granted, the whole probably the reason why I had that reaction is because I knew I got back into wrestling and he was already in kind of the comedy figure, so that's kind of like I've only ever seen him as that. So that might also be like a thing on my head. So.
Yeah. Dougie Doug said, Rusev already looks stale and tired to me. I don't know what he has to offer that Jeff Cobb, Bronson Reed, or some other NXT guys can't do with less baggage and mileage. There is baggage with Rusev, but he's really good. I mean, he's like early on. I mean, the reviews for his work in the ring were really good. I don't quite know what to make of what happened in AEW. I've heard different opinions on, why things went awry like they did. Why, he was just left to his own devices and wanted to play video games, and then had this Redeemer thing that never went anywhere. And, did he not want to do jobs because he just wanted to get back to WWE? Was his mind on other things, not pro wrestling? His heart wasn't in it. There were other things going on with him. I don't know, but I hope he gets, there's so much talent there. I hope he's reinvigorated and has a whole productive new chapter. So anyway, let's go to Derrel next. Derrel, welcome to the show. Thanks for calling. What is on your mind about tonight's Raw after Mania?
How y'all doing tonight? And let me get right to it. John Cena, because I'm surprised that this wasn't even, you would have thought this would have been the number one topic, but it's not. And I just want to go on and state an opinion of mine. I think when I say us hardcore fans are a lot to blame with like the angle we get with John Cena. And two reasons is because we fall in love with nostalgia and this term, you deserve it. When you deserve what you already have and things like this. And now we're getting this John Cena angle, which him standing out there tonight felt like he was acting, and he wasn't even putting on the acting job from his HBO show or nothing like that. It was like he was giving a half-hearted. It was like he was faking it. It felt fake and forced. The facial expressions and everything, and it just wasn't believable. And hopefully they can turn this around. Even though he said he got 27 days left, that's not even a full month. So I don't know how many angles you can shoot with him and stuff like that and build upon this. But what are your ideas on how this can go? Because I felt like after yesterday and today, they did more harm long-term than they are with this short-term thing that they're trying to boost, like with ticket sales.
All right, Javier. Derrel's right. I mean, when I said we could have headlined with any number of things on tonight's show, we have covered some secondary things before we get to John Cena's title celebration. What did you make of it? What do you think of Derrel's take on it?
Yeah, it just felt almost like punting because it just felt like a dark version of the kind of promos he would give as a babyface. Mm-hmm. And the only thing is that because there was something when I was running the primer I wasn't like 100% sure of, because he had mentioned, like he had toyed with the idea of retiring the title. I did not know exactly what he meant by that. If he was like just going to win and then just retire immediately. But they explained more that, you got 27 more appearances to take this off of me. So at the very least, we got that, which I think is what I'm focusing on when it comes to John Cena, because we got the, 27 shows before, this goes home with me. Also explained, did a lot to explain, like, well, I'm, you at home are not idiots. There's going to be another Raw and there's going to be a tournament to crown the next champion once I take it with me. But the line is broken. And that was, I don't know if it's happened.
I think he said that at the beginning too, that you guys will probably hold the tournament. But it won't be the same.
Yeah, but like really hammering it home as the start of the story, because I remember them mention it, but since there was so much other stuff, it gets lost in the weeds of what they were doing, setting up the match. But now that he's won the title, him specifically saying this is what's going on. Now each person that he's going to fight off, starting with Randy Orton, presumably, is like the guy that you're like, oh, he's the one who needs to beat it, because the threat here is the breaking of the lineage of the title. So I think that itself adds to any match that he's going to be involved in. And what doesn't help is the fact that they're advertising the Australian show and he's going to be like center star of that in October. So now well, he's going to be doing something major in October. You could kind of extrapolate based on the number of showings that he's going to have between now and then. If he only has 27, well, that sounds to me that there are going to be stretches where he's not going to be showing up for a month or two. So,
Well, 27
or
days.
Week or two.
Yeah, 27 dates gets us, if he's on every single week until October. I mean, May, June, July, August, September, October. There's 26 weeks in a year, and October is 26 weeks away. I mean, I think he can appear a lot. Because I think he counted, he's only used up 9 of them, right? Or he didn't use 27?
I'm not sure. I don't remember how many he had used and how many he has
left.
left.
I think the 27 was how many he has left. But I was impressed by his memorization. He named every one of those European cities in order and all the other dates. But you're right in the fact that, like, by having 27 dates left, if my math is right and my interpretation of that is right, it's telling people, like, if he were to lose to Randy Orton, what would he still be around for? You know what I mean? So I don't know. I mean, like, there is the idea of buy tickets to see John Cena, but it overrides the mystery of the storyline of, is he just going to be sent away packing because Randy Orton's going to destroy him? And, you know, he won't be around for long. Four Eyes Malone says, the first couple promos, I felt John Cena believed what he was saying, but after his Pat McAfee appearance today and then his promo tonight, he definitely seemed half-hearted. Dougie Doug in the chat says, Cena isn't any better or worse as a character than he ever was, but the bar was raised so much in his absence that his flaws stand out a lot more than they used to. Derek Mitchell says, on the Pat McAfee show, Cena gave a very good interview, staying in character. David Chase in the chat says, Cena has creative control on this. It might not be his number one priority, but I do think he is fully invested. Derrel, back to you. You can follow up on your points or what we had to say or bring up a different topic. Up to you.
I would say this. I think online they also announced that a date in October would be kind of his last month, because I think after the Perth they showed a date that said it was his last date. So you already got a conclusion and ending, and even bringing it up, that makes, how do you tell stories when he's saying he's going to retire with the belt and he already giving you a countdown and you announcing days in advance where you building shows around him?
It's not ideal. I will interject this. I still would not rule out John Cena ending his 27th date as a babyface. I don't think he's gone too far. He hasn't gone so far he can't go back to that. And so, I mean, his final match might be Bronn Breaker as a heel, beating him as a babyface. I mean, we have to be open to a lot of different possibilities. The Cena title reign story might end at SummerSlam, but then we get a couple months of a proper babyface. You're the legend. We love you still, John Cena. And I think they probably have something in mind for that. I don't know if Rock's going to be involved or not. I talked about The Rock on the VIP exclusive Wade Keller hotline earlier today, and the vibes and impressions that I'm getting all along and what this weekend told me in terms of those manifesting with ideas. I know he's doing the big movie shoot in Hawaii right now, but I had some news in terms of his involvement on the WrestleMania situation or lack thereof. So, Javier, I mean, what do you think about the idea that Cena closes out this run, date 27 is him as a babyface, losing or beating some sort of heel?
Yeah, I mean, it's likely, because I think that's probably the way they would want him to go out. That way they can continue, be easier to sell for merchandise in the future. Mm-hmm. When he's under his Legends contract. So I think it's because even the Perth thing, I'm already thinking that's probably going to be he's already going to be a babyface for Perth. So yeah, that's kind of where I agree with that thought.
And Derek Mitchell is saying John Cena's last WWE match is scheduled to take place in December during WWE's annual holiday tour with a target date of December 27th. Is that usually the MSG show? I could see him ending in a ceremonial off-TV way in that context. Let's see. Okay, so David Chase in the chat. So I want to make this clear because we might have some new people joining us. How can I call into the show? I'd love to chat sometime. The channel was recommended to me from some folks I met at WrestleCon in Vegas. Still jet lagged though. Awesome. Glad everyone spread the word. And by the way, like this show, comment on it, subscribe, set alerts, leave comments, whether you're watching us on the PWTorch YouTube channel or like most of you listening on your podcast app. We've been podcasting for 15 plus years, built up a big audience there. Give us that 5-star rating and actually making positive comments about the show helps too. It really moves us up the search returns and the recommendations. So David, being a caller on the show is still reserved for VIP members and Patreon supporters. So pwtorch.com/govip will tell you all about VIP membership if you're not a VIP member. If you're new to our brand, you might love VIP membership, and if it's in your budget and you have time for everything we offer, check that out. But so we don't get overwhelmed and we give a priority and a little extra perk to our VIP members, we do reserve that. Derrel, you are one of them. Back to you.
Yes, sir. And I'm getting a good deal for it as well.
Awesome.
But last only thing I have to say about Cena, I feel like since wrestling is a semi-sport, the only person I ever seen go out on top in sports, like winning and being a champion or something like that, is John Elway. And because it took him so many years to get back to the championship after his first couple years, he was going to the NFL title so many years and kept losing. Then the separation, then he retired. Even the great Tom Brady didn't go out a winner. He went out losing. Not being bad, but he lost. So that storyline didn't feel right. Now to go to my next thing is I want to get back to talking about Gunther. The angle that they did with Gunther tonight, I felt like did the most for anybody, because even though the crowd wanted to cheer people on the one more times, like what they did with Becky's turn, which I'll speak on in a minute, but what he did, even though people were calling this show and say how much you don't like Pat McAfee and his commentating and all of this, and he do too many poop jokes and all of this, and I guess now we know he come out high for the show, based on what he said in the interview when he interviewed Paul and John Cena. They still got a reaction, an emotional reaction out the crowd that changed the crowd to buy into what they were doing. And I felt like this giving Gunther another direction, because obviously he's not going to be on the title chase, which he hasn't been in a long time in WWE, and give him a different direction where he still means something and he meant a little bit more. They even felt something for Michael Cole when he told Adam Pearce, hey, no, I'm not being ran away from. I'm going to do my job and I'm going back out there. How did you feel like this angle did for Gunther? Do you think that it make him a little bit more important? And what direction can you see Gunther go from this if this going to take him away from the title for a little while until they find something else?
Javier.
They do stuff like the comment. I mean, I'm not talking like guest commentators or like McAfee's a special case because he's an athlete and stuff. But commentators like Cole stuff, they don't do that too much. What they did with Gunther, so it tells you that it's something important, that for him to do and to get the mind off and move him to the next feud, which is likely going to be McAfee, would be my guess. The overall presentation of it, I really like the way, like I mentioned earlier, the fact that McAfee came to the rescue of his friend, and what I really liked is that he knew not to step on Gunther's aura, for lack of a better term, because the moment that he hits Gunther, he backs up and he's like, what did I just do? I'm probably gonna be in for a beating. So he didn't just like mean mug him or anything and any of that stuff, because he's not a professional wrestler. So I think that everyone handled their positioning there very well. The fact that they have Gunther doing it, it's something that because there are people who, I know a lot of people dislike McAfee. I'm kind of agnostic on him. I know a lot of people dislike him. There are other people that really like him too, like him also. And for the people who didn't get who had commercials, while he was walking out, the actual stadium started chanting his song, trying to sing him along, to buoy his spirits as they're leading him out to the back. So there are people who like, and they're kind of like the voice you listen to. So you're going to if someone attacks Cole or somebody attacks McAfee or attacks Tessitore or who have you, the crowd's already also going to have like more sympathy towards them because they're kind of like you, the voice in your ear. So the fact that it was Gunther, it puts him in something high profile after having lost the title. So, which makes me think that, so he's not going to be going down the card or anything, like, Priest, basically, after the WrestleMania.
Groot Dog in the chat says Gunther became the biggest babyface in WWE for me, choking out Pat. I know Jason Powell and over at ProWrestling.net in his Raw report, which I highly recommend. I always got a tab open for his reports too, to see what he and Jake Barnett are saying during live shows. He's like, "Oh, Gunther's babyface turn. This was a very newsworthy show." Tongue in cheek, of course. Four Eyes Malone says McAfee is annoying because he is given privileges most people wouldn't be given, but that's another story. Goodfella 1422 mentioned, I know McAfee is loved or hated on the internet, but it seems like the live crowds all mostly love him. Where is this going? Standard Deviation says, I do think it was weird. Gunther's post-Mania heat was used to get Michael Cole cheered. By the way, as an aside, before I throw to you, Javier, and then back to you also, Derrel, on this, I am I don't know how to say enough good things about Joe Tessitore as an announcer now. I mean, he's like, he might be my all-time favorite wrestling announcer already. Jumping past Lance Russell and Jim Ross and Michael Cole at his best and on and on. I mean, honestly, I'm overstating things. He's got some years to put in before he gets there, but I loved his speech. I found it politically ironic given who WWE tends to support and how he reacts to free media, but and criticism, the Mad King not wanting criticism, so you don't get to do this or that. I'm going to shut you down and all that. But this whole thing about we're announcers, let us do our job. It's okay for us to have our opinion, have thicker skin. Don't try to stop us. Don't try to beat us up. Joe Tessitore's message is so I want my announcer to seem like he wasn't, to use the old term, smartened up. Like Joe acts how I've been advocating for wrestlers. He reminds me of Mick Harsh, and you always use Mick Harsh as not a super high profile national star. He was on ESPN, the AWA ESPN shows in the 80s. And then he's based in Minnesota, good friend of mine for so long, Torch contributor for a while too, and a co-host on these shows. And he did a lot of indie announcing. And Mick always was a standard for defending the baby faces, decrying the heels, being consistent. And his whole framework was, we're here to do our job. We're here to serve the fans, not the promoter, not the wrestlers. We're here to serve the fans. And Joe Tessitore's speech was inspirational, should be played for every announcer out there who's announcing wrestling. Your job is to serve the fans with analysis and framing things and enhancing things. And he said it should be hands off. We should be allowed to do our job. He was just a great voice to follow up. So Michael Cole didn't really have to say it over and over. And Pat McAfee obviously was being treated medically, so he couldn't. So I love Joe Tessitore. I think he made this angle, enhanced this angle even more with this just very straight, earnest, and very professional delivery. I don't like spineless announcers who are cowering, and I don't like fanboy announcers like Michael Cole and the Jey Uso yeeting. And I know that's sort of contradictory to my point about this, that, what I think Michael Cole's made a fool of himself by getting too into Jey Uso, but the point being Gunther shouldn't beat him up because of it, even if some fans would like him to. But the crowd, Javier, is into this angle. So where does it go? Are we getting Michael Cole and Pat McAfee against Gunther? I don't want that. I know fans might like that. I don't want Gunther in a comedy angle, and I don't want him selling for Pat McAfee. So what's next? Or is that what we're getting?
I think likely McAfee's going to be involved in some way, shape, or form, unless there's a wrestler out there that's going to stick up for them. That would be the only one. I just haven't had time to really, go down the roster or down the, possible future roster to figure it out, who it might be. I'm sure that if they put McAfee and Gunther in a match together, it's going to basically be McAfee be chopped a billion times, and Gunther slips on a banana peel, so McAfee gets just one or two hits in, but then gets squashed. I don't think they're going to do anything. They'll be able to handle it. I don't think they're going to have an even Steven, match between the two of them. But I think that's likely what you're going to get, kind of like in a squash kind of situation. If it goes on from there, it'll likely be somebody comes in and saves them that has some sort of connection to McAfee or some newcomer or something like
that. Derrel, back to you.
I think the same thing. I think this is a perfect opportunity to bring in a new wrestler to add to this, to give them some type of growl, some type of fire up underneath them. This should go on for a while.
Derrel, your audio's a little weird. I don't know if it's because of your headset or your mic, but get a little closer to us, or I don't know what's happening, but you sound muffled. Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yep. You sound better.
Okay, my bad.
Yeah, that's okay. We just want to hear you.
I got you.
Yeah.
I think you should be able to add another wrestler to this, and it shouldn't end like at backlash or anything like this. He should come out and be trying to keep intimidating Michael Cole, where he go after whoever they praise next, because he came after and attacked them because of their praise for Jey Uso and not praising him. So the next person, whoever they praise, that's why I say you got to pick the right wrestler to put behind that, and he attacked, and that starts some type of 3-month feud or 2-month feud or however you want to do it, just to give somebody else some buzz, because everything else seemed to be tied up in other different storylines. You finna have Roman and CM Punk going with each other. Obviously, the SmackDown title, which John Cena has, gonna be tied up somewhere else, and we don't know where they're going with Jay. So you just want to have different directions for different people.
Anything else, Derrel, you want to bring up?
Last thing would be how the crowd messed up the Becky Lynch turn. You made her feel and seem more like a babyface or something than anything else, and you made people who was looking from the outside in. Let's say if I brought somebody over and that's their first time watching the show, Lyra Valkyria, they'll be like, I guess she ain't nobody, because the fans asking for her to get done again and again and again. It like you killed her buzz. And I know American fans always complain about the overseas fans, but at least they react to what's going on in the ring. They might chant a little bit too much during the talking segments, but they do make the stars, or the people who they trying to get over as stars, feel like stars. Well, now you're going to have to do so much work to make Becky Lynch feel like a heel. That's why it's like, why do you even turn people when you have to work so hard to get them to be over? That's a Street Profit problem, Charlotte problem, a lot of people problem, even Becky for a minute. That's been her problem.
Yeah, Javier, what do you think of what they did with Becky? Derrel says the crowd ruined it. You could also say trying to book Becky as a heel is asking for it. Your take on what they did with her tonight and why you think they did it, and what do you think of Darrell's take on it?
Yeah, I mean, first off, it's on the wrong person, because I may be wrong in this. It might just be a personal opinion on mine, but it does not feel to me like Lyra Valkyria is over to what they're trying to get her to be over. It really feels to me like they're trying to do a hard sell on me whenever they're talking about her. It's just, for me, she's not clicking. So maybe you could get this if it's like Io. She did it to Io Sky, for example. I don't think people are going to be feeling too bad for Valkyrie getting beat up, Valkyria getting beat up. So that's for the first thing. Second, you had Becky Lynch on the post shows on the scrum or whatever with her daughter, like with super cute moment, and we're supposed to believe this now at the same time. And that's WWE produced material. It's dumb to turn her babyface. She's been gone for a year. Heel. She's been gone for a year. It would have made more sense if they had just left Bayley there and have Bayley be the one to turn heel. It's mind-boggling to me that they're going to try yet again to do the heel thing when the fans want her to be a babyface. They want to cheer her. And the fact that the fans fell in love with her when she became a badass, when she stood up there bleeding, and when she started beating up everybody, basically the Rhea Ripley's, what Rhea Ripley's doing now, because Rhea Ripley's kind of acting heelish, but people still love her because she's a badass. They're going to like Becky because she's a badass. You just buried Valkyria, and you're in the same situation where people are going to, and if you're going to, this is my one complaint, my one worry, if you put her in part of that dangerous alliance, people are going to, if you put her next to Seth Rollins, they're going to just cheer both of them. So yeah, I do not like the idea of her going babyface, even if it's for if there's a bigger I keep saying babyface heel because she's meant to be a babyface. It just boggles my mind what they're doing, and they just screwed up with Charlotte when they were trying to pretend like she was a babyface when she made her comeback. That's just it's mind-boggling to me.
So lots of chat comments on this. I threw them on the screen for our YouTube users. I'll read through them here now, and then we'll throw back to Derrel for some final words from him. Goodfella 1422. I agree about Lyra, rooting for her, but it's not there. Kyle Fassel says getting ahead of Charlotte, a Charlotte crowd booing situation on Becky. Becky was flat as a babyface, said Midnights and Rock and Roll, and she wasn't red hot babyface. You can say, oh, she brings her kid out, and that was cute, and the crowd should have turned her the first time. Yeah.
But she's coming back from a year hiatus.
Mm-hmm.
She's going to have momentum coming into it. This feels like to me the same thing that happened with Rollins, where with Rollins they had these, when he came back from that injury, where they had these videos where I think this with the CrossFit Jesus they started calling him, and all these motivational videos they did with him. He comes in, the crowd went nuts, and they turned him heel the next day. She at the time when she left, she was not, because they keep screwing with that. Had they just come in and instead of being, you had a better start from zero spot.
Yeah.
You're working against what the momentum.
I was in the building for that Seth return, and it's so memorable because it just felt like the beginning of something huge, and then I was just like, oh, geez, they just did that. Derrel, did you want to jump in on this? I saw you raise your hand.
Yes.
Yeah.
The reason why you have to try something different with Becky is because before she left, the reason why she was flat is because when you put her side by side with Rhea Ripley, because that was the rise of Rhea Ripley, it killed the badassness of Becky. She couldn't compare Rhea new, flashy, giving you a different feel on it, and the badass feel that Becky at that time can't give you. And I'm pretty sure if you brought her back and tried to sit her right next, because it looked like they're trying to reverse what they did, the damage that they did to Rhea with what they did in the angle with her, and you try to sit her next to Rhea and Io, you having too much. And right now they don't really have a top heel woman to combat the babyface problem that you have on Raw when it comes to the women division. You don't have a believable person, and I understand what they was trying to do, and yes, you could have probably chose somebody else for her to maybe beat her up or whatever, but it seems like you having an issue because even with Liv them winning, Liv them got cheered, and I'm thinking they getting cheered because people starting to come around on Dom, so eventually you finna have to turn them face. And now you have no heels, no nothing. So you have to try something different because the last time she was here.
I'd like to see Paul Levesque just sit down with everybody and go, is this a problem? Do we agree it's a problem? And if they don't, maybe don't have the meeting. But and then how do we fix it? What do we have to do in every facet of WWE to get fans back on board with reacting in a way that's consistent with how they're presented on TV? Because you don't want badasses who are positioned as heels getting cheered. You need to position them as babyfaces then, which is fine. But you need to have a culture of your presentation that fans abide by. They respect. They're on board for it. They like WWE. They don't, people aren't rebelling against WWE. They're not booing Cena, and this isn't like when they're booing Cena and Roman Reigns. They feel like they have this permission structure now to just react how they want, and that WWE thinks that's great. And I think, it's kind of like with the what chant, when there's all that outrage when WWE social media said, hey, show up and do the what chant. And people are like, are you kidding me? Is that person like have any clue how disruptive and hated that is in the locker room, and how it's ruined promos, and nobody wants that. And so there has to be kind of a culture of presentation that guides fans who want to be helpful and not get in the way. And right now, I don't think the casual fan or the committed fan who is more casual and isn't thinking about it the way we talk about it on the show is thinking they're doing anything wrong by reacting naturally to whatever inclination they have. So it's complicated, but I still think the peak experience at a pro wrestling show is when the promoter is in alignment with the fans and they've pushed the wrestlers who fans want to cheer in a way that leads fans to cheer them, and they set up believable heels and a storyline that people buy into. The pro wrestling's made for that. It's home team, away team. It's not an HBO Netflix series, where there's all these nuances and it's a 10-episode season. That's just, pro wrestling's not built for that. It just, if you don't have to do that, why would you do that when you have the option to have the home team, away team dynamic? More comments about Becky. Kyle Fassel says, I'd rather have Becky as a heel. But Rude Dog says Becky Lynch as a heel didn't work before, and it's not going to work now, especially against the chicken lady. I think Lyra is likable enough. I mean, I don't think like the idea that they bonded and are friends and Becky turned against her, even if people aren't into Lyra, they're like, but that's kind of mean of what she did to her. It's kind of like what happened with Io Sky. People weren't as into Io. They obviously respect her and like her more than Lyra right now. There's more history there and a bigger body of work, but they just were kind of pissed off at how Rhea and Bianca were treating her as subhuman. And so I think that's what they're going for here. But it remains to be seen how it works. Four Eyes Malone said, yeah, this was an indictment of the crowd, but also Lyra's popularity. Then Ryan Solorio says, Lyra's a good wrestler, but has no charisma to connect with the crowd. Derek Mitchell said, could Becky's turn be revealed as Becky's could Becky be revealed as Bayley's attacker and set up a feud with those two? Yes. I mean, the announcers made it very clear. There's no evidence of Liv and Raquel doing it. Nobody has accused them of it. So why are they defending themselves against it? And it makes sense because, I mean, kind of like with Naomi and Jade. Naomi took Jade's spot. Becky took Bayley's spot. Got to be in WrestleMania. So that is there. Doesn't mean that that'll be the case, but it would make logical sense even if it's a little, copycat. Standard Deviation just simply said, I didn't like the Becky term at all. Forrest Malone said the term white meat babyface is what Lyra makes me think of. Joe Schmo says, it takes wrestlers a while to get over. I wouldn't give up on Lyra just because it's not there now. And Standard Deviation said, yeah, when it happened, I was like, oh, another heel turn. Cool. Whatevs. So anyway, lots of opinions on that. Kyle Fassel just outright says, I kind of just don't like Becky back. I'd rather have new talent there. I don't agree with that. Becky is too talented and there's too much there, even if it's been a bit of a rocky road for her along the way. All right.
I'd take her over both Charlotte and Bayley fan, but I'll take her over Geller right now too.
Those are fighting words. Zach Barber says we've seen Becky Lynch as a heel before and it sucked. Doesn't mean it can't work. You can tweak it.
Yeah, I'm not saying it can't work. It's just that it's against the wrong person. It's at the wrong time.
Yeah.
It's just a lot of and which is funny because everybody, a lot of people are saying that they would like to see her as a heel now. I've always been backwards with the rest of the crowd when it comes to Becky, so I would prefer her as a babyface now, not as a heel.
All right, Derrel, back to you for anything else.
I think she wouldn't have nobody to go against, real threatening of a heel to go against. That's why I understand the alignment. And going to which would be my last thing, the women that they introduced today in that match, you can see that they're trying to bring people heel because obviously they had Julia go full heel because Stephanie Bakir came in not as touted as her, but taking her in that babyface field. Roxanne, who they've been working as a heel, and I'm trying to see are they trying to match up Rhea and Io to go against these two and split them apart. But I want to see how it works because those two women are smaller than Rhea. So do you have those two go after Rhea and then separate Io somewhere else, or start both of them together and see how it works? Superpower, mega powers come together type of thing or something like that, just to see, and so you can keep them off and refresh Rhea from the mistakes that you made with her mushing Io and people feeling some type of way about her, even though she got the loudest pop at WrestleMania with her coming out in that match.
Yeah, it's the mix of NXT talent's interesting, and you always look at it as, okay, is this just to promote NXT tomorrow night, try to pop a rating? sell tickets, or is it a strategic planting of a seed for when they get called up? I mean, I think the track record is very mixed. You know, I don't think Roxanne Perez is in a better position because of how she's been used on the main roster. There's something, you know, Kyle Fassel said in the chat. I think they make all these new talents seem smaller by presenting them as NXT talent, as opposed to just calling them up and having them presented full on as main roster wrestlers. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Javier, what do you think? I know you're not super immersed in the NXT product right now. I mean, there's a lot of wrestling. It's tough for people to fit everything into their schedules, even for me. I remember telling Dave Meltzer that like 10 years ago, like, you can't watch everything. He was feeling guilty. I'm like, baseball announcers don't watch every baseball game, or journalists can't watch every baseball game that exists. You know, there's only so much time for that. But WWE wants you watching NXT because, one, it's more revenue. It's this brand that has taken off as a full-fledged profit center for them, and it also saturates, is the word I'm looking for, the environment to take away from AEW, as does just promoting TNA. You know, I mean, there's all kinds of perhaps devious strategies, nefarious strategies in this. But in the end, what matters the most of all is that their developmental talent doesn't get put in a position that weakens their ability to get over and have an impact on the main roster. How does it work for you as you see these NXT wrestlers show up, disappear, show up, hang around, show up once, and it's promoting something on Tuesday night that you may not end up watching?
Yeah, I'm going to set aside Stephanie Vaquer and Julia for now, just because they're like top stars outside of WWE that were signed in, and I mean, obviously not your everyday, not everybody's going to know about them, but I think that they have that going for them.
And a WrestleMania weekend crowd is going to know them better and react.
And they're
going
to know them for
It's a good week if you're going to do it. It's the Mania after Raw, the Raw after Mania is a good time to do it because you will convey to the national, international audience these wrestlers are big time.
Yeah, and they're
well known at least.
And they had on on the social media there were a lot of pictures of and they already. That's about it. I was not surprised when Stephanie Vaquer came out because they were already setting this up in social media, talking about through interviews and stuff where Sky was Stephanie Vaquer's like, you know, dream match opponent, that sort of thing. So some of that was already talked about. So if you're like really hardcore, you're locked in on that. So that's going to be a side thing. But yeah, when it comes to like what they did with Ciampa and Gargano and who was feeding Jade. Not what's her name? The one that was that Cora Jade.
Okay.
Cora Jade. Yeah, and it doesn't feel like you've said they're here permanently. So like sometimes they start showing up like constantly, and they're like, is it permanent? Is it not? You know, and if it's not, like maybe don't like highlight the fact that they're NXT, because NXT is a developmental brand. Like I said, Stephanie Vaquer and Julia a little bit different because they also, you know, are learning language, and you know, it's I could understand, like, you know, as long as they're not there for like ever. But yeah, I mean, I do agree. I don't like the idea of like, you know, because you just start seeing them and they kind of like become like background noise for me. I think part of it, that was Valkyria's problem, because she showed up like a few weeks before she was officially called up. So, you know, I don't, you know, show them, if you want to show them like sitting in the crowd, that's one thing.
Yeah.
But like them being involved in storylines and stuff and crossing over, and then maybe it's because someone from the main roster is going to go over to NXT and wrestle. I'm not a fan of that, because I do think that does lower them a bit.
But it does pop ratings for NXT, and they like that too. I mean, it is. They're serving so many different masters.
Yeah,
to try to balance
exactly.
Out. Yeah. Derrel, appreciate the call as always.
Thank you too, Wade and Javier. Y'all have a great night.
Thanks for your VIP membership too, and your loyalty all these years.
Yes, sir.
All right, cool. All right, so we had some super chats. Super chats a nice way to show extra support for what we do. Appreciate that. I know that's a YouTube thing. Reggie Brown earlier. Reggie, sorry I didn't get to it right away. He said, bring it up on the screen here. Jey winning, who so far has had a better career, Kofi or Jey? Jey.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, the last 5 years have cemented that. New Day felt like mid-card comedy act for a while after their turn. They have been elevated at WrestleMania weekend and with a promo tonight. But Jey is a level above Kofi at this point.
I just had to consider a little bit just because of the length of Kofi.
Yeah, I'm taking that, but I mean, Kofi had more singles than Jey.
Yeah.
But when Jimmy was injured, Jey wrestled. When Jey was injured, Jimmy wrestled. I lose track of how long that was. But Kofi definitely had a singles career, like a full-fledged singles run before New Day, but never got to the point. Even with his Kofi Mania run, I mean, the way that ended, Jey's isn't going to end that way. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think it's a pretty solid.
Yeah, with this, I mean, I do think this weekend of this last feud with Gunther, I think that solidified it officially for me.
And I think the work he did in the bloodline is what led him to catch up and surpass. I think he had to catch up in the bloodline story. He surpassed this, I think. I mean, Kofi Mania was fun, but this feels bigger than that and more sustainable. Or at least it'll be sustained by the booking longer. Maybe Kofi would have been sustainable if they treated it that way.
Yeah, I think it's just different criteria for you and I, because like I'm also thinking about like Kofi's been a mechanic. You need so he's been an important part of like shows and stuff. So I'm also factoring that in. But I think officially for sure with the last bit of his career for sure. Now R-Truth is a different story. No one's going to mess with R-Truth with me.
By the way, if you're watching us on demand after the fact and you're not in the chat, this is a good topic to put in the comments. I will read, and I'm curious your case for Jey or Kofi as having the better career at this point. I think that's actually a really good topic to get going in the chat area in the on-demand version of our live stream here. Okay, another great question, Reggie, by the way. I appreciate that. And the super chat, of course. All right, so then Jimmy says, not defending last night's main event, but this Raw after Mania immediately makes me excited about the summer to come and builds to SummerSlam. Big picture, Javier, is this one of the better Raw after Manias ever? I mean, there's times where Raw after Mania, it's a lot of, I don't know. I mean, like there'll be a big moment and the crowd will do something, but it also is sort of like, we know everyone's watching and we'll set the table for things. But this was packed. I'd be interested in just like an efficient chart of like the big things that happened every year for the past 15 years since Raw after Mania really became a thing and compare them. My memory's not good enough for that, but how about you in the Raw after Mania memory you have?
Yeah, I mean, I think there might have been some more entertaining ones, but that's mainly because of how far off the rails they went. Mm-hmm. So not exactly. I do think this is probably one of the better ones, particularly the last couple of years. I remember there were complaints that the last couple of Raw after Manias, they kept selling it as like, oh, you never know what's going to happen. And, you know, and nothing really did. And everybody was disappointed. For sure, this was a lot. And not because necessarily the fans. I know we've talked about them a bit, but it's not like they hijacked the show. They even know who was it they apologized to? Cena. They apologized to Cena for hijacking previous shows. I mean, that just tells you the kind of like stuff that's going on. But
yeah, Adam Kidd said possibly the best Raw after Mania ever. JC Scooby said a nice above average show after Mania. They have had garbage for a long time. Interesting note, Andy. The Mario and Sonic Fan 2000. That's a lot to read. There were only 3 matches tonight. Is that some sort of record? Yeah.
There was. I do remember because for a while there in the dark days, I was actually adding up the minutes, and I remember there was one Raw that I think had 11 minutes or 12 minutes of matches.
Wow. Jeez. Four Eyes Malone said it's the best Raw after Mania since before they started branding the shows with that name. So there's that. Derrel said it's a packed show, good, but it's not something that left you feeling like you'd remember anything from it months later. I don't know about that.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. I think people disagree with that.
I mean, we'll see how the Heyman thing turns out, because if that obviously is not going to fall flat on his face, but if it were, then yeah, we were not going to remember it. But that should be
some votes for Jey and Kofi. Ryan Solorio says, I think it's Jey, but we have to see after he loses a belt like Kofi. Just saying how much I enjoyed Kofi Kingston, said good fella. Standard Deviation said Jey will be remembered as better and that's what matters. Zach Barber says the answer is Kofi. His title win actually moved people to tears. Yeet is more over than Jey. What do you make of that argument? That the crowd's into the entrance, they're into yeeting. I think there's a connection with Jey, that people who say that, Todd Martin's among them, are underrating. I think there's a genuine affection for Jey, and part of it is his acting, part of it is being part of that Bloodline storyline, and I think that's giving a boost to something that, on its own could be sustainable. The yeeting and the underdog storyline, you could plug and play people into that, but I just think Jey is a really good pro wrestling actor.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm a little bit more. I've moved more to the middle because I think I was closer to Todd before. I've definitely moved more towards the middle. I'm also not of the, it's a lot of things went right for him. So it was not just. I don't think he could have done it without the Bloodline story, without a lot of things. But I think he also the kind of personality he is, the kind of person he is, and the stuff that he's done, I think also adds to it. And I think he has deficiencies, but those are masked by everything else going around it. And I think that it's one of those cases that was the right person at the right time, and everything just, and with lightning in the bottle, I don't think you could have there was a lot of luck also involved in it too. So yes, I'm not going to take any, a big part of it is credit to him, but also I don't, so I'm, like I said, I'm kind of more in the middle of that reaction.
Yeah. Fair enough. C Squared in the chat says Jey is the mix of the Yes Daniel Bryan vibe with the chosen by the company vibe. Interesting framing of that.
Yeah, there's a level of Danielson to it. It's just that Danielson was more charismatic and he was being held down, while Jey has definitely been uplifted by the company. So,
Derrel says Jey makes you feel like he'd sit down with you and have a beer, and y'all would be acting like you've been friends for years. And Derek Mitchell says, I think Kofi Mania brought people to tears, like in a video of MVP and Chad Gaspar, to see a black WWE champion and see black representation.
It's funny, the Jey drinking a beer. It's you sitting down, drinking a beer, watching Jimmy make a fool of himself. That's kind of that shit there.
All right, you had to go there. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I think different. I totally respect and understand different fans are gonna go. This Jey thing was the highlight of my wrestling fandom in this era, and I was in the crowd, or I loved doing it, and I couldn't get enough of it, or I got enough of it, but it still was really good. And other people are gonna look at Kofi and say that was historically significant. It was, it was one of those situations where the crowd made it happen. And I mean, I do think there's something about Jey where it's, the Royal Rumble win was a corporate decision. Whereas Danielson and Kofi were sort of just manifested as unstoppable. And so, I mean, like I said, that's why I want to hear, I want to see people comment below on this if they're watching the show back.
The important thing is that I think both of them resonated for people for different reasons, but they both have resonance towards certain people where it'd be probably their favorite wrestling memory would be, and I think that it works for both of them.
Yeah. Yeah, fair enough. All right, another super chat to get to here from Zach Barber. Why do they keep trying to make Becky a heel when nobody wants to boo her? I want to cheer the man. Is that too much to ask? Last time that didn't go well, though, Zach. That's the thing. The crowd, it was uncomfortable and awkward. Becky was so good. She was so professional. I think she was on the right side of that situation with Charlotte. And yet something went wrong. And I think that's why we're getting what we're getting. Now, you can go back and say that heel turn was a bad idea to begin with. I know someone in the chat said, she might want to just help Lyra Valkyrie get over. I think somebody said that. And that was part of the impetus for her turning heel is she just was excited to work with some young baby faces to help get them over. It didn't play out that way, but I don't, it is tough when you're presenting her in WWE Canon over the weekend with her kid, and it's, the kid's adorable and all that. But now that Seth's a heel and they acknowledge in canon that they're married, it's not like, I don't know. I mean, that's going to be on fans' minds. And it's kind of like the awkwardness of Renee Paquette and Jon Moxley. Does Becky not have anything to say about what Seth is doing? Are we supposed to cheer her while Seth is doing that? That's awkward, too. I don't think they should. If she was against turning heel and everyone thought it was a bad idea, but they felt they had to because of Seth, you don't want to do that. You don't want the wife to take a step back in her career to accommodate, because it'd be awkward to accommodate the man. And it shouldn't work in reverse either. But I'm still not against Becky joining the new Dangerous Alliance, as I'm calling it. Who knows if they will. So anyway, there you go, Zach. All right. Let's see here. What's going on? I'm trying to take off the chats here. All right. Let's go to our next caller, and we'll go to Joe from New York. Joe, welcome. Good to hear from you. Thanks for holding. What's on your mind about Raw tonight? Joe, are you there? All right, Joe, we'll go back to you. We'll go to Jason D from Australia. Jason, welcome.
Yeah, thanks, Wade. Good to speak to you too
Of course.
again, Javier.
Hey.
Well, we know the company's behind Jey because we heard Triple H in that promo for WWE Unreal say we're going to put the Rocket behind you. So what are your guys' opinion about this? Because, geez, this is something that I want to watch, but I actually don't want to watch. I went out of my way to not watch the Rock documentary or the WrestleMania 40 documentary because I didn't want to know too much about all the decisions. There's some things I want to leave to the imagination, but I don't know now. Look, you don't have to watch it if you don't want to. So if you feel like it's spoiling too much of the magic, you can make a choice not to. But man, you talk about taking the toothpaste out of the tube. I mean, they're really going all in now, aren't they?
So I talked about this in the Wade Keller hotline for VIP members earlier, this new show. They might be teasing more than they're going to deliver. It's open for interpretation. You know, Paul Levesque saying we're going to pull the curtain back. Yeah, they're pulling it back, so you get to see what a booking meeting looks like. You get to see what a promoter, booker, head of creative talking to a wrestler looks like. But in the Wade Keller hotline earlier, I said, there's head football coaches in the NFL who tell a young quarterback who was a backup and there was a veteran, or it's midseason and they're 2-6 and it's disappointing. He might pull that quarterback aside and go, we're going to strap a rocket to you. This is your time. We're going to give you an opportunity. It doesn't rule out the kayfabe style, storyline style framing if you want that, which is, yeah, but Jey took that opportunity and he won the Rumble. He won the world title. He beat Gunther. So, you can break it down and find holes, but if there's a generic idea that it's sort of, you can interpret it two ways. We're going to push you to the moon. You're going to, be in a world title match at WrestleMania, or we're going to strap a rocket to you by giving you opportunities in a spotlight, but you got to deliver. Maybe they're going to be careful about this. I'm not going to condemn Levesque for this, even though I think Levesque wants to be popular on social media and online. He wants to be the good guy in the Tony Khan battle, the NXT AW Wednesday War going back 5 years. That was a thing. And Levesque wanted to be the guy pushing smaller indie stars in NXT in the black and gold era. And I get that. He wanted to be popular with that group of fans. So I don't know. I have to wait and see, but I mean, if there's a booking meeting and they start talking about how, we need this match to go this many minutes and here's going to be the finish because we have this plan for the next week, that is pulling the curtain back more. But the fact is everybody knows that stuff goes on. The question is, should WWE be in the business of producing that kind of content about current things? It's different than LFG. LFG is about training people how to be a wrestler, but it's not pulling the curtain back on the movie you're currently watching or the TV show you're currently watching. And I think those are differences, and I hope they're differences that are being accounted for in WWE corporate when they decide to have a series like this. Javier, your thoughts on what you've seen so far?
I mean, I'm interested in the production, how they prepare for the next town or what they're going to be doing. That the more physical aspect of it than I am of the storytelling aspect of that. Like you said, of stuff that's going on now or just recently went on. I might visit it later because I really like how storytelling is done and how writers' rooms work and whether it's comic books or TV shows or what have you. And getting a window into that kind of booking meeting would be interesting, but not like I said, not I don't want to know what's. I'm assuming they're not going to be talking about what's going to be happening next year, but I don't want to be able to also extrapolate from what I see and probably give it some time. I'm kind of in the middle. I'm both it's something that's interesting to me, but it's also not probably something I'm going to make time for.
All right, Jason, back to you.
I don't know, because during the promo, when Cody was on the floor, you heard like a female ref saying or someone saying, "Oh, it's okay, he's selling," and that sort of stuck in my mind.
Yeah.
And then I see McAfee get choked out, and I love that angle. But then I'm like, "Oh no, it's okay, he's selling." Like I don't need to hear that.
Yeah, because like sometimes I'm like interested because there's some matches where I start looking for like the communication between the wrestlers because I'm interested in that too, like how the when someone says something to somebody, and I try to pick that out just because I'm interested also in like how they tell the story in the ring, that kind of stuff. But yeah, I mean, I get where you're coming from because like if I just want to lose myself in there, I don't want to be thinking about that. And sometimes you'll see or sometimes it'll come through on videos like when you hear like the other wrestler hit me, and that takes you out obviously because you're hearing this on TV and the audio confidence. So yeah, but yeah, I mean that's kind of my
Cena's gimmick should be. I wish Cena's gimmick should be. You can't hear me. I wish he would have that gimmick.
Yeah. So, but yeah.
Jason, anything else on that or what else?
All right. So just quick look. Okay. So Wade, let me ask you a question, right? You weren't too happy. Well, not so happy, but you were like sort of questioning what was going on with Punk and Rollins and Reigns, and people were sort of competing for cheers, competing for pops. It was confusing people. But now that the story has played out, and we've got Seth Rollins as a definitive heel, along with Paul Heyman, and we've got Bronn Breaker introduced, would you look at this and say that this was all worth it in order to get us to this point?
So I will say, the way I talked about it is I think that if Seth and Roman and Punk bashing each other was the only exception to an otherwise, steadfastly applied rule of baby faces don't tear into each other and, fans aren't made to choose between wrestlers they like, it'd be worth it. I mean, I think that this is, again, my idea, and what you're saying isn't an unfair representation of what I said, but it's not a complete representation of my framing. I talked about it a lot. So I'm sure there were times where I talked about it and didn't say this, but I often said, and I said this at the top of the show tonight, that Seth Roman Punk match wasn't created because people thought this is a great WrestleMania main event. It was created because they thought we can tell a good enough story with some negative side effects, which is Punk and people who love Punk and love Roman having to kind of choose, and even Seth, who they have to choose. Obviously, with Seth turning heel, they weren't worried about fans turning on him, but the process left fans going, I like Punk, but I like Roman, and who do I want Heyman to go with? That whole match was designed for where we are now, what happened Saturday night and where we are now. So was it ultimately worth it? Sure, but do we have to pretend it was ideal, the journey that they had to take, which is Roman, fans are chanting OTC all over the place. Punk, people love Punk, can't wait to see what he does. And now we spend months having to kind of watch and go, I'm conflicted. I kind of like Punk, but kind of like Reigns. They don't like each other. Seth's saying bad things about both of them, and he's a babyface, and I'm sort of nodding along, going, some of that stuff is true. We just went through that. So much of Punk's gimmick is just people speaking the truth about him. I mean, we had like however many months of Drew McIntyre doing that week after week. Punk is pretty Teflon, but there comes a point when you add that to Rhea and Bianca before Bianca's full-fledged turn, and Io with 3 baby faces in the ring there. And then you've got the Intercontinental title match where, we don't really know what Bronn Breaker is. He was, obviously in a holding pattern until the angle tonight. And then again, there are other examples with WWE where they're kind of going fans, just pick who you like. And as long as you react, we're happy. So my issue was more, there was just too much of it. In the end, you can see the construction as you look back. And I always said, as long as the angle at the end makes sense, where we look back and go, this all makes sense, I'd be on board. So my too late, but short answer to you, Jason, is yeah, it was worth it. But that doesn't mean there wasn't collateral damage. But you can see what they said is everyone's going to be focused on, is Heyman going to be loyal to Punk or Reigns? I mean, he's not loyal to either. Now, I will say one criticism I had of Cena's turn is he didn't explain everything. Now, maybe tonight wasn't the night for it, but I kind of want to hear Heyman explain, yeah, Punk, you put me in a bad spot. It doesn't go back further than that. When did Heyman make up his mind to do this? What was the rationale to turn against his best friend? Was it, at what point did this become a possibility, and at what point did it become a plan, and what was the rationale for it? I crave that. As a viewer, I want that. Same thing with Roman. Is he mad about Roman disappearing after WrestleMania and not responding to him and not being there at MSG and leaving him to get beat up? So I want that, and I hope we get it. and I the storyline it's not time to fully judge it, and tonight wasn't the night for that long style promo probably, but because they had to introduce other things. But Javier, do you think we get that? Do you think we get Heyman explaining why he chose to turn against his best friend, why he chose to turn against the tribal chief who didn't look him in the eye and expected him to be loyal to him? I mean, you don't want Heyman to make too good of a point where people get sympathetic to him. So you got to make sure the argument paints him and Seth as heels.
I think he's going to have a sympathetic reason for doing it. I don't think he can get away from that. With the Punk thing, I think that you could do more, but they did enough that because when he turned on Punk, he said, "You made me choose," and so that you forced me to choose. You put me in a bad position, and then that makes sense to me why he would decide to go against Punk. And while he didn't say this, the fact that the way that Reigns treated him also makes me think that this is the reason why. Now, I would like to know, like I said, how long was this in the works? Because they hinted on commentary this is longer. They even asked that on commentary. So I'm assuming we're going to get something about it, because if they're asking on commentary, how long has this been in the works? How long has Heyman, has this been going on for months? They didn't bring that up on commentary.
And it doesn't mean his plan had to be, I'm going to low blow him and then low blow him, and he knew that 6 weeks ago. But when did the resentment build up? How did it manifest in that moment? And does Heyman go, Roman, you act surprised, but think about the way you treated me. I can only take so much. CM Punk, we're best friends, but what about this? What about that? Why are you shocked given the position you put me in? So when I had to choose between the two of you, and both of you put me in that position, I all I started to think about is how you two have been totally unfair to me. I mean, I don't know. I mean, whatever. I'm not going to write Heyman's promo for him. He can. That's his gift, his genius. But I would like to have that covered. I hope Punk and Roman in the canon of Raw and SmackDown, that it gets covered. I don't care about some podcast interview Heyman does, I care, but that's not enough for me. I want it in canon on the show proper.
I think brought up.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm just using it as example. If there were nothing else from this point forward, and I don't believe that, I have enough for the Punk situation, why he would betray on Punk. I can extrapolate why he would betray Reigns. I would like to know when the alliance between Rollins and Breaker happened. Those would be the main question I would have, is when that alliance happened.
And a sit down interview with Cole, sit down interview with Kathy Kelly, or Joe Tessitore would be great. Let's do a sit down.
And the other thing is keeping in the details that we watch, that we look at. Did you catch Heyman's look when he was looking at Rollins? Wasn't the same look that he has when he looks at Roman Reigns, which is adoration. It was more like, this is a piece of meat. This is my piece. That's kind of like what I got from it.
I do want to say too. So obviously I crave an explanation. I hope we get it. I think the storyline will be better historically. Look back on better. It'll be more effective if we do all that. Another side to this, totally unrelated to that, is we get to see a different Paul Heyman. Paul Heyman with Punk is different than Paul Heyman on commentary in the 2000s, and Paul Heyman in the Bloodline being the subservient kind of the EVP looking up, or the spouse looking up at the politician or the president role, is different. And with Punk, it was two contemporaries, or I don't know Paul's 15 years older than Punk, give or take, but best friends, and that was a different dynamic than with Roman. And so with Heyman, we're going to see something different with Seth, and I'm curious if we get mastermind, alpha, not wise man off to the side, but what's a term, Javier, for Heyman being, because Seth is an architect and a revolutionary, all those things. So a co-collaborator with Seth, but in a way that's different than the dynamic with Punk and Roman. I'm looking forward to that. I think Heyman wants fresh. He doesn't want to do the same thing forever. You know what I mean? And with Lesnar, he did all of Lesnar's talking as an advocate, but we got to see a very different, and I'm grateful for it as a pro wrestling viewer. We got to see that with the Bloodline, and then with Punk, we got to see a more human side of him, including at the Hall of Fame, which isn't canon, but it's not canon. So what do you think Heyman's dynamic with Seth and Bronn should be? Because obviously Heyman is in a much clearer mentor role to Bronn than he's had with anyone in modern times.
Yeah, I mean, like an architect type role, I will have to go through my Machiavellian. I think it's more of a Machiavellian thing with the look that he's been giving, and how I think it's more someone who's puppet master. Be another one. Puppet master would be something along those lines. That's what I look up synonyms for puppet master. I think that's probably what's mastermind kind of fits it.
To me, I'm thinking. I guess I would think more head football coach. Bronn Breaker comes from a football background, and I think Heyman will be. I don't think they'll call him this, but like head coach Heyman, like he'll be the guy who handles the business, but also the strategy, career advice, career guidance, in a way that's different than people saw his relationship with Roman, or the more personal best friend with CM Punk, or the more kind of lawyerly advocate for the Beast Brock Lesnar. This could be more football coach. I'm going to steer you and lead your power and your. I mean, and eventually, obviously, we're going to see Bronn Breakker against Seth Rollins in a big match when one of them splits off from Heyman, and I don't know who was first. That's a thought for a different podcast and another day, not the night of. Ryan Solorio says, I think him and Seth are equal. He doesn't cower anymore like he did with his other clients. And yeah, I mean, that's what you're pointing out, Javier. Al Larcher says Heyman can be the offensive coordinator. Kind of like that. He can be the offensive coordinator in the Dangerous Alliance. Derek Mitchell says Paul Heyman's going to reinvigorate Rollins' career. Roman is a multi-time world champion and main eventer as the big dog, but became legendary as a tribal chief. What do you think of that? Is Rollins' career due to be reinvigorated, or is Seth going to be kind of bogged down maybe what Heyman and Bronn are doing if the focus is too much on him?
Well, I mean, I think they pretty much, they gave us the spoiler. This is going to be the year of Seth Rollins. Is one of the things that he kind of like mentioned basically, that this is, from between now and December, it's going to be Seth Rollins 24/7. With, I expect Breaker to be in like the Solo Sikoa role of like, people waiting for the moment, and excited for him to break out, and he's still going to be the badass. He's going to be there, but he's going to be on a leash, and he's not going to, they're not going to let him leave, they'll let him loose now and then. But I think it's going to be like very similar to how they did Solo for the year, positioning him to the position to a place where, he then turns on Rollins at some point. And here we go. We're again predicting the breakup.
All right. Joe Schmo says Seth's been doing great. People act like he wasn't in the main event on night one last year. This only helps. Also, Seth had an all-time Mania cash-in, now an all-time win. Looks good on a resume. All right, Jason, back to you.
Well, what Heyman and Seth are doing at recruiting Bronn, this is about a vision for the future. So, and it's more like a collective type of thing. So when Heyman was with Brock, it was all about Brock. When Heyman was with Punk, it was about with Punk, but sticking it up to the authority. They had an attitude to them. And with Roman Reigns, it was all about this specific family, right? Now with Seth Rollins, because Rollins called himself a visionary, it's all about a vision for the future and the type of people that they want in the wrestling industry, because Seth Rollins has gone on about how Punk didn't deserve it. He just kept going on and on and on about how Punk didn't deserve it. And he's talked about how Roman Reigns has been selfish. So it wouldn't surprise me if Seth's speech that he gave to Heyman a couple of weeks ago, that's when the wheels turned for Heyman and made him think about what Seth was saying. And I'm happy with that explanation. So now it is about a vision of the future that they want to create and they want to mold. So Heyman is kind of like the mentor, and Seth Rollins is the visionary. And when Seth embraced Bronn, he said, that's my boy. So he's almost playing like a more junior version, if you like, of Paul Heyman. Now, like, Heyman is the mentor for Bronn outside of the ring and sort of in the ring somewhat, but Seth is more the in-ring one. So they're looking to put together a group for the vision of the future. And there's no doubt Becky's I love the idea of a Dangerous Alliance group. I love Becky getting involved, so we've got synergy with the two heels. And like I mentioned this in the chat, but I firmly believe the next person they should add is a Logan Paul. It keeps them as heels. Paul is the future. He said that. I like the idea of Paul interacting with more wrestlers on a regular basis. Plus, just having Paul Heyman and Seth Rollins gloating over Logan Paul in an admirational way, that gives extra heat to CM Punk. There is, like, Paul Heyman like calling Logan Paul the guru, the guru of social media. You have it all. You're doing this. You have a vision. Just having Paul Heyman gloat over Logan Paul would drive CM Punk crazy. It would add heat. Paul has already eliminated Punk at the Royal Rumble. If you want to get them genuine heel heat and not keep them as these sort of cool heels that have that sort of credibility and that and that veteran-like status where people have respect for them, they need. I'm a firm believer if you put a heel group together, you need a really dislikable heel to keep that heat. And I can't think of anyone better to round it out than Logan Paul. I think it would be a perfect addition and it matches their vision. And Rollins could spin it as that Logan Paul is not selfish because he doesn't have to be doing this. He's the type of person that we need in this group, and it just flies against CM Punk. I really like this idea of a group, and I think all the pieces are there.
First of all, I'm curious if Seth wants to, going back before the Logan comments, if Seth wants to be like, does Aaron Rodgers want to be the backup quarterback to a rookie and mentoring him? But if needed, you can, take some snaps. I don't think Seth wants that right now. I think they want Seth to be, his promos leading up to this is I'm going to run the industry. And I don't think that was to be a player coach or, a guy whose best days are behind him, but I'm getting behind this Bronn character. I don't think they want that. So we've got to have Seth as the centerpiece leader of this group for a while. And that gets into kind of a Roman versus Solo dynamic with Bronn being solo, but Bronn being having much better upside and more potential for him. So just throw that out there. I don't think we're getting Seth where it's like Seth and Heyman working together to make Bronn the next big thing. Not yet, and maybe not ever. Seth is going to be the alpha here. He is in his prime.
Wade, he's grooming Bronn to be the next one, and he's almost telling Bronn to have patience. But what happens if long-term Bronn loses patience?
Right, yeah, that's fair.
That's the dynamic.
Yeah,
that's the dynamic there.
Fair enough. So Javier, what do you think about Logan Paul, Javier?
I like that idea. It's a good, like what Jason said, heat magnet helps keep that on the group. I'm thinking Maestro could also be what you'd call Heyman.
That's a good one.
Because I think different from the previous versions of Heyman, I think this is him more in control than previous. So I think something along those lines, where is more what we're to expect from him. And I think I like Maestro because it's less him doing stuff and more like conducting an orchestra and all the pieces, together. And I can see, Paul, Logan Paul being a good piece if he's going to be for that. So trying to think who, I
think Logan would be too much. Yeah. I think it would be, there'd be just too much going on in the, like Rusev can be there and not be just pulling all the attention to himself. And I just don't think Logan could be that person. So now you've got Logan competing with, I think he plays the same position on the field as Seth and Bronn, and that's already one too many, except for finessing it. So that's my concern, Jason, with that. You can respond to that or anything else, and then we're running low on time. I want to get to emails too.
Right. So just quickly, the reason for Logan is that I think you also want the dynamic of someone in the group, that you want the badass in the group, people to picture if the badass got their hands on this particular person. So again, thinking long term, just having Logan Paul being the annoying heat magnet and people thinking, man, I'd love to see Bronn Breaker spear this guy. Like, you got that dynamic too. But I think I know what you're saying with Seth and Logan playing the same role, but again, it's about the heat. I don't. They need to attract heat. Yeah.
I get that. I mean, it's a compelling point as far as that goes. Right. I just don't think I still think it's too much. Javier.
Fair enough.
I think a good middle ground then would be what you already talked about, Wade, Sami Zayn, because I think Sami Zayn turning on Jey, if they do that, will probably get a lot of heat on him. And then, if he could be the annoying twerp.
Maybe the Buddy Roberts and the Freebirds.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. The guy who does the job and is obnoxious, but not the world champion level guy. I don't know how Sammy will feel about that. Derek Mitchell says Logan's too cocky to compete with Seth in the group. Standard Deviation says Braun's a young guy, but we don't need another. Bronn is a muscle Brit, says Wu-Tang. Standard Deviation says I like Jeff Cobb for that role. So yeah, Jason, anything else?
Oh, I think left.
Jason, you still with us? Okay. All right, cool. So let me see if Joe from New York is with us, and we'll have to keep it short because I want to come in under 2 hours and hit a couple emails here too. Joe, are you back?
Yes, Wade. Can you hear me?
Yeah, sure can. Yeah, so
Yes.
sorry we're getting to you late. I got to keep you short, but try to come in with a couple points.
Yeah, I just want to say quickly that this WrestleMania season, one thing no one's talking about, it's the end of it now, but this was lackluster at best. And the WWE attitude, I don't like their attitude. They need to be taken down a peg here because they're acting like, oh, we're setting record revenue. You're charging $10,000 a ticket.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you are doing that because you're charging over-the-top prices. And they did not sell out this WrestleMania. There was plenty of tickets available. They cut ticket prices 2 days before the event, and they should never do this again. They put the show on Easter Sunday, Easter weekend. That is disrespectful right off the bat. And second, you don't know how many viewers didn't watch because they were with family or at church or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
That was just a lackluster, and whoever did that should be fired. And not only that, I did read a report that Vegas wanted them there Easter because they say that's one time that Vegas is very slow.
Yeah.
And they should have said, we do this event for 39 years and we never did it on Easter. And there's a reason for it. And I think it's going to hurt the overall final numbers because I think a lot of people missed it.
Yeah, no, I think that's a fair point. It's a very big picture. WrestleMania season being lackluster. I mean, I don't think this was peak. I think ultimately Cena Cody felt like a bit of a letdown. But it had its moments. It wasn't awful. But it's kind of in the middle zone. It wasn't worst case scenario, not best case scenario.
The week to week shows feel like filler.
Yeah. I mean, there was some of that.
And that's not good. That's not good because they don't feel important. They should feel important, and they don't. And I want to say one more thing. With The Rock, people can say whatever they want. Ask USA Network. His 2 appearances got the best rating. They got 1.7s there, where at least the other weeks they were getting 1.3s and 1.4s. And I don't care what anybody says, Netflix, those ratings are disappointments. You got all those subscribers, and you can't get 3-4 million people to watch your show. That's a weekly number that comes out 8 days after, and they're not getting any viewers. They got no new viewers going to Netflix. They basically they're not drawing for the global number sucks.
Yeah, I think they didn't know what to expect, but this is on it's on the lower end when you look at the global nature of it. But that happened with SmackDown on Fox too. There's a certain number of WWE fans, but I mean, I think people are watching who weren't watching before because now people who don't have cable but have Netflix can watch it, and people who still have cable are watching SmackDown. You said one thing about Triple H wanting to be liked. Well, he did a lot of things this week that will not make people like him. One was when he told fans, if you're not eating, you're not a real fan and you don't count. And 2, why the hell did he have a 45-minute Hall of Fame? And the other thing I want to say about the Hall of Fame, how dare they put the Hall of Fame on the East Coast at 1 a.m.? How disrespectful is that? And I don't go back and watch. I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions that people go back and watch. If I don't watch it live, I don't watch it. All right, Joe. Appreciate your thoughts.
Have a good night.
Yep, appreciate it. Yep. Javier, anything you want to say quick about Joe's points?
No, not really.
Okay.
Just
right.
give me a couple jokes, but
All right. Dan M, a VIP member, says in storyline, was Michael Cole provocatively saying I wasn't the one who tapped out to Gunther, deserving of getting choked out or shoved? Didn't come across as the sort of thing an announcer with any integrity would genuinely say to a wrestler, or in shoot terms, to a UFC fighter. This Gunther was provoked. I think there is absolutely a case to be made that McAfee and Cole went way too far in being biased toward a wrestler, therefore against another wrestler. The idea that they get wrapped up in it and then they kind of compose themselves is one thing, but to get wrapped up in it and then get wrapped up in it and then get wrapped up to it in it and being so proud. And I mean, they basically were like family in the front row, obnoxious frat buddies with Jey. And but the fact is, this crowd was totally behind McAfee and Cole, chanting for Cole. They love Jey, and they love that they love Jey. I mean, I'm conflicted on this, but I get what Dan's saying, Javier.
Yeah, I mean, he has a good point. He shouldn't have shot the guy in the head for it,
Yeah, yes, exactly.
Take it up with management.
Yes. All right. JB in Detroit says, what had been the strength of WWE for over the last few years post Vince were crowds that got behind everything WWE fed to them and reacted appropriately because the strong booking made sense and was strong. Lately, particularly tonight, it feels as though the crowds are revolting against angles and storylines, and I don't think it's a coincidence that it's coinciding with what I'd consider to be lackluster booking at best. I think that evidence of this was immediate when a returning Becky was greeted with some boos before her, quote, heel turn tonight, and then got cheered during the turn. I'd argue that this came from stealing Bayley's spot in a Mania match, which, in my opinion, was a completely unnecessary way to open a storyline. Let's see it play out. I mean, damage is done, and I know people feel that way. But if this is to set up, something for Bayley to get, spark a fire under her as a babyface, it can be good for her. So Javier, we covered that a decent amount. Anything you want to add?
No, just waiting to see on what happens from this point out.
Yep. Number 2, I don't feel as though Lyra Valkyria is being elevated by these interactions with Bayley and Becky. If anything, I feel as though she's being overshadowed. I will say that I think she shares some blame on this, along with the booking. Lyra, 2 belts, also feels like a derivative afterthought of a nickname. I'm not sure she'll get the major face reaction now that Becky will likely act like a cool heel, in my opinion. So we covered that too. I kind of feel as though it would have had a greater impact if Becky had simply returned as a heel, attacking Bayley or Lyra, rather than this random one-day tag title heel turn. What do you think of that, Javier?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is the worst way they could have done it. Pretty much. I didn't like the way that because ultimately they damaged Valkyria. So if they don't care about Valkyria, then fine.
How many heel turns over a Mania weekend is too many? That's subject for another day. I think it might be time for Dom's face run against heel Finn. Not that I think there isn't more to get out of heel Dom, but I think that the natural headwind that they'll be fighting will be too strong to bother fighting. Dom, big pop, WrestleMania weekend coming out, especially when he won. How do you explain the love for Dom?
My brother came up with something with Chad Gable, but I think also it kind of fits almost every single wrestler, is that you have a wrestler who's a heel, turns into a comedic aspect of it. People start liking it, and then he becomes a babyface. And that's we're at that point, I think, with Dom, and I think people respect enough of the work that he's done. They like his commitment to the bit. It's watching just the social stuff. I'm like, are they dating for real? Because they're like they put a lot of social between him and Liv out there. And it's just been entertaining, and I think people really are ready to cheer him on.
Should we expect a draft in the next month or two? I don't know either way. I don't think there's news on that. I think the idea was probably, but yeah, probably after Backlash is the time to start expecting news on that. Finally, brief answer to this. I love Gunther, but I'd be lying if I said I wasn't a bit concerned as to the direction they'll take him without the belt. He's basically held the IC or world title the majority of his main roster run, and he does seem like the type of character whose gimmick works best holding a title.
I kind of have to agree with that. He's always had long title reigns. UK champion for ever. That is a concern. Yeah.
And I understand why they're going to do it, but I can't say I'm intrigued with the Cena-Orton title feud in 2025. Javier.
It's just one of his last matches, and they have history together. It's just one last time. One last dance. Excellent.
All right, everybody, get a 7-day free trial of VIP membership. PWTorch.com/GoVIP for full details, or search PWTorch VIP in Spotify or Patreon for that 7-day free trial. Full details on a full VIP membership unlocking 30 years of archives, 35 plus years of archives, hundreds of retro radio shows from the 90s, a customizable podcast feed, exclusive backstage content, breaking news, insights, a variety of opinions, diverse staff. Check it out, pwtorch.com/govip. Check out Javier Machado on the PW Torch Daily Cast later this week with his weekly Acknowledging WWE podcast. A lot still to get into. I don't even want to look at the Raw review Javier, and think about the things we didn't get to. But I feel pretty good that we got to a lot.
Yeah, I think we did.
All right. Thanks, everybody in the chat. Thanks to our super chats. Thanks to emailers. Thanks to callers. And we'll talk to join us tomorrow night for the post NXT show. The PWT Talks NXT crew have got you covered there. And then I'll be by Wednesday night as the spotlight turns back to AEW.